Alright, so in this video, hopefully what we can do is launch our first exploit, which is exciting, but we first need to put together other pieces of information because we need to know what we're exploiting. So what do we know about our target? All this stuff that we've been gathering. I'm going to do a hosts command, and we're Windows XP Service Pack 2. That narrows it down a little bit. We know that we're not using Linux or a Unix, Mac. We're using Windows XP, and we actually have a specific Service Pack 2. So that also is super helpful. Now, if we were to just search for exploits for just Windows XP Service Pack 2, we would get back many vulnerabilities. And so even though that's good information, it may or may not actually help us. We need to narrow it down a little bit further. And so how we do that is we look at the ports. We need, even though it doesn't tell us the ports here, the ports are what we're going to go after. Now we don't always have to do that, but for what we're learning now, that's what we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is go back to ZenMap, which is Kali Linux Information Gathering, Network Scanners, and ZenMap. And remember that scan that we did earlier? We saved it. Hopefully you saved it. Well, I'm going to open up that scan, and we can open this up here. Alright, Microsoft DS, it's running on port 445, and the actual version, we're sure that that's what's running because it actually gave us a version, Microsoft Windows XP, Microsoft-DS. You'll see this in just a second. I'm going to show you some other cool things. The Nmap output, we can also go back down there and check out some information. There's the NetBIOS and stuff that we had looked at earlier. But all this stuff we can review once we've saved it. That's why it's a good idea to save it. But for now, we're most importantly concerned with the port and the service. Services, again, we can see that there, which is cool. So now we can narrow it down. Now we can narrow it down to a service. We have a service that's running on port 445. We know the service name. Now we can get specific and we can search to see what exploits are available. Well, I'm going to save us a little bit of time because I already know what's vulnerable, what exploit we can use. And we're going to be talking about this in just a second. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this website first. This is grc.com. And it basically allows us to search any port number. It says enter port 0 to 65,535. And so I've already typed in port 445. And of course, look at that, name, Microsoft-DS. Well, that's exactly what we got. And we can also see over here, port 445 is SMB over IP. SMB is known as Samba. Stands for server message blocks, and of course you could read further if you want to know more information. The other port that we had that was open was 139, and so if you want to look up what that is, there's NetBIOS. Again, we saw NetBIOS in our scan. It was the first port that we saw, and we had other little descriptive information about it, so we could technically look up exploits for this and this service as well. So it's just little pieces of putting stuff together and trying and finding something that works. Something that works also very well is exploit-db.com. This is the exploit database. As far as I know, Backtrack Linux, they had this in their browser as a bookmark. Kali Linux, I believe, and most of everything that is in the exploit database, not everything, but a lot of the stuff that is in this exploit database is already in Metasploit. So what you can see down here is I've clicked on the search button, and we can now search according to what kind of operating system is running and, for example, the port number. If we know the CVE number, we can put it in there. But if we're going to search for the CVE number, I don't know. I mean, it seems like we would know everything by that time. So I've selected Windows. Type any language, doesn't matter. Let's just search. port 445 for Windows. And we get some results back, and actually the second one that we get, MS08067, there it is right there, MS Windows Server Service Code Execution Exploit. If we click on this, it should actually show us the script that runs. If it's not taking a million years, there we go. We can actually see that this is a Python script, and if any of you learn Python or know Python, you could actually look at this and see exactly what is going on. You can even alter it. Maybe there's an error, there's a bug, or maybe you want to alter it to do something else. You can still take snippets of this or whatever, and you can alter it. But anyways, all of these are public. So if you were worried, is it going to do something malicious? Should I run this on my computer? Is it safe to do so? You can view everything on here in its raw format. That way you can see exactly what it's doing, if you can understand what it's saying. So that's awesome. And everything that is put into Metasploit is tested and trusted. So anyways, you don't have to take my word for it, but I just wanted to show you that website as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the security bulletin. If you want to find out more information about MS08-067, basically says that the vulnerability allows remote code execution, and it gives you a little breakdown here of what's affected and everything like that. But it's got some stuff like Windows Server 2008, and I've never tested it. I don't even think it works on that. So Microsoft still says it's important rating or whatever it is. But anyways, so just wanted to show you that. And the last thing that we can do now is we're going to search for MS08. And I don't know if it's going to be a dash, I don't know if it's going to be an underscore, but we know it's MS08, so we can actually see. We can either search for SMB, we can search for MS08, there's different things that we can try. So first thing I'm going to do is search for MS08. So if we would have searched for SMB, we would have found it, MS08, even though that it was only partial. We can still get the entire thing here. And it has a rank of great. So the higher the rank is, which excellent down here is the best. Great, I think, is the one right underneath that, and the normal's underneath that one. The higher the rank is, the more likely that we are to be successful with it. Of course, we need to know, well, we've got all these exploits, that's cool, but how do I know that they're going to work on my system, on the target system? So we can take this path, I'm going to highlight this and copy it, and we can type in, let me scroll this down here, I can type in info, and I can paste in the path of the module. In this case, it's also the exploit. So it gives us a bunch of cool info. Let's scroll up. We'll start up here at the top. Microsoft Server Service Relative Path Stack Corruption. Man, that's a big name. It says it's for Windows. Okay, cool. And then here's what we need to know. Available targets. This exploit is extremely popular if you watch a lot of training videos, YouTube videos, and that's because this thing works on basically every XP machine. It doesn't matter if it's Service Pack 3, if it's Service Pack 2, if it's XP Service Pack 0, whatever. So it's an awesome exploit for Windows XP. And I believe it came out in Service Pack 2. I believe they knew about it, and they didn't patch it, and they released Service Pack 3, and it's still not patched. And now Microsoft says that they are going to stop supporting XP at the beginning this next year, or January of 2013. And if Service Pack 3 is the last thing that they are updating, then this exploit's good to go. I mean, it'll work on basically any XP machine. So that's why it's an awesome exploit for XP. It gives us the basic options. What do we need to know to run the exploit? Basically, we need to know the R host, and it looks like there's already default information set for us. The R port, well, we know it's on 445, but Metasploit has that as the default. The SMB pipe, we can only use browser or the server service, which browser is fine. The defaults are perfect. All we need to do is plug in that IP address. So that's awesome. And then it gives you a description if you want to learn more about it. Here's the CVE number and some other links. So that's a pretty good explanation, and as far as what I can explain and show you guys on looking up stuff for this particular exploit. So now let's go ahead and try and use this exploit. So we're going to do the use command, and I'm going to paste in that exploit, and we can see that it's loaded it. Perfect. Now I'm going to do a show options. Let's take a look. This should look familiar. We just saw this above. All we need to do is plug in that R host. Now, why didn't it plug in our target IP already? Well, if you remember when we did the set G earlier, we did it for R hosts, plural. This one is just R host. So that's why I didn't do it. So set G R host 192.168.1.100. Now, of course, that's for me. You guys got to do whatever your target machine is. Show options one more time. Alright, so we have the exploit. But with every exploit there needs to be a payload, because with just the exploit, that's nice, but what happens after we run the exploit? Are we trying to get a command prompt session? They call that a shell. Are we trying to get a shell? Are we trying to look and see what files are on the computer system? Are we trying to maybe add user accounts? Whatever it is, there's a whole ton of there's a whole bunch of payloads that we can use, but we need to basically execute something, otherwise we're just exploiting it for no reason. We need to have a payload. So I guess for our first exercise, what we can do is we can use the add user payload, since I just brought that up. And to set a payload, we can actually do a search if you guys want, and what we're going to be doing is the add user. And we're going to be using payload Windows add user. So I'm going to set payload. Since I'm setting a payload, it's already going to be referring to the payload directory. So I can just type in Windows add user, and that should be good enough. And I hit enter, and as you can see, it's added payload Windows add user. So let's show options. So the default, we have our exploit at the top and then our payload options right here. And the default is the username will be Metasploit, and the password is Metasploit with a capital M, a $, and the number 1. It used to be different, but Metasploit just recently did an update where they changed some of these values. And I think they changed some of these values because Windows is now starting to require an uppercase, a special character, and a number. That's my guess, because it used to be different. They used to not include some of this other stuff that's in here. But we'll give it a shot. We'll do what they're suggesting. Of course, if you want to set any of these values, you can set user to like username. You can say hacker. Show options. We can see that it's changed the user to hacker. We can set the password. Set pass to, I believe if it has to have an uppercase, we can do pass word. We can do a 1 and a $. I don't know. I think Metasploit wants us to do that now, so let's try that. Show options. And there's our password. So custom, it's not required. We don't need to worry about it. Everything else is filled in. Everything up here is filled in. So perfect. So what we have is we have our exploit that's going to try and exploit that SMB service on that port 445. And our payload, what's it going to do afterwards? If it's successful, it's going to add a user to our XP machine. Now let's look at our XP machine, and I'm going to go to the Start menu, Control Panel, User Accounts, XP VM1 guest, and we actually have a Metasploit user that's already on there, but we're trying to add a user named Hacker. So let me jump back over to the Kali machine. Now to run an exploit, all we do is type in exploit. We don't type in run, we just type in exploit. Alright, awesome. It returned us to the module, didn't give us an error or anything like that, so perfect. Let's jump back to our XP. Control Panel. I'm going to go to User Accounts. We can actually see that a user named Hacker has been added. What I'm going to try to do now is I'm going to go ahead and log off, and let's try to log in. Longest log off ever. Man, oh man, okay. Hacker. And I believe, what was the password? It was password with a capital P with a 1 and a $sign. Hey, alright. Looks like it's working. Applying your personal settings. So, if we just wait about 1,000,000 more years, then this will be added. But anyhow, that was successful. We can see it's applying the personal settings. And that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. So we did our first exploit, kind of learned a little bit just briefly of how to kind of research. We're going to get into some other exploits and everything, of course, and we're not always exploiting a service or a particular port number. That's just kind of what we're starting off with. So anyways, I will see you guys. Oh, there we go. See it logged in there. See you guys in the next video.